maybe a fourth. They're coming out of his beat 6 and 7. Top to Roberts has been an 8.
Oh, wow.
No.
Well, for the 41st and final time in season 2022, SuperCoach365 podcast back for round 25. Ryan Selvage and Tommy Hudson with you to do it one last time. Tommy, we're looking forward to all the footy this weekend, but as sad as it is, because we're wrapping up SuperCoach365 podcast week to week, we won't be doing it.
Yeah, g'day, mate. It's been a long season. I think we first recorded one of these podcasts back in January. So, yeah, it's been a long time, but I think we'll start to miss it only a few weeks after SuperCoach is finished. You know, the games won't have as much meaning for the diehards like us.
And then after that, of course, only a month. Well, it's the pointy end of the season, isn't it? The NRL finals. So we'll get 4 weeks of quality footy, and then we have to sit through the Big Bash. There'll be about 1,000 games of Big Bash to look over the summer. You've got here in the notes, back for one final time tonight. Is it the final time ever? Well, if it is, it may be because of Tristan's either pulled the sponsorship or he's more than happy to throw more dollars at us next year because we're either robbing him or he's going to make a monster off us. Of course, I'm speaking of the big SuperCoach365 season multi. It goes on the line this weekend.
It sure does. For those who don't remember, it was the Storm top 4. We need them to beat the Eels Thursday night. The Roosters to finish top 6. They pretty much need to beat South on Friday. And the Sharks top 8 and the Knights missing the top 8 has already been done for a while. So it comes down to 2 games. It was $7 at the start of the year. It'd be considerably less now, but probably not as easy as we thought it might have been.
Yeah, it's been a tough watch, hasn't it? We've sort of ridden the emotions, the highs and lows. The Roosters, a team that we thought would have been a sure thing to finish in the top 6. They're thereabouts just by the skin of their teeth at the moment. On that, if you had your chance, if you had your time over now, would you be happy to take both the Storm and the Roosters this weekend? Or if you could get into the other way around it, the Eels and the Rabbits, which way would you want to be on? Are you confident with our multi as it stands?
I'm not confident. They're both 50-50 games, and obviously we'll chat about them in a bit more depth soon, but it's really funny how it's come down to, the last 2 games of the year basically mattering for the whole bet. So fingers crossed, and if anyone listening or watching got on the bet, good luck to you as well.
Speak of the devil, and I promise you hand on heart this is true. Tristan from topsport.com.au, he's just messaged through. I said, mate, any final comments ahead of the weekend? Anything you want to add in? He says, boys, I've just got out of church. I've been praying, and I don't know if this is true. He says, I've just left church. I've been praying. I was praying that a heap of Roosters players were going to be rested, but not to be the case. So Tristan, maybe he's feeling a little bit nervous just as much as we are at this weekend as well. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. But no, he's a good sport, Tristan. So whatever way it lands this weekend, fair play to either him or us and the punters who got on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of hope Melbourne win. Obviously, I hope Melbourne win on Thursday, but it'd be good to have that final game, South versus Roosters, to see, if we do win or not. So all the best with it. Hopefully we can get through.
Fingers crossed. And of course, this is a SuperCoach podcast, so we'll get into that now. But good place to start there. We've been writing that one for 8 or 9 months. Speaking of SuperCoach, let's wrap it up. 1 round left. We'll check in with our ranks and our scores from last week. Myself personally, a disappointing 11.09. I dropped 1,000 spots, so not what you want to be doing this time of year. Still sitting top 5%, but again, that's pretty low to where we want to be playing.
Yeah, I went up slightly, up 119 spots, 17.01 with 1 week left. I really wanted to be top 1,000, and I was there for most of the year, up quite high at some stages, but really fallen off the last month or so. So it's looking unlikely unless we get some big scores this week.
Yeah, we'll be needing those, and it all starts on Thursday with one of those important games for us and our season multi, the Eels and the Storm. We're going to get into our season previews very soon. Before we do, though, Tommy, little prelude, of course, as well as all the action from round 25, which we'll look at in just a matter of moments. Our Player of the Year awards. We did this last year. We're going to do it again tonight. Big thanks to everyone who jumped on the Instagram story in the last day to have their say on that, and a bit of fun coming up in the back half of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we play this game hard for the whole year. It'd be remiss of us not to, I guess, honour the people who have done the best and done the worst for us. So looking forward to that.
Stick around for that. As we say, back end of the podcast, we'll go through all of the award winners and more than 10,000 votes as well in the space of 24 hours. So big thanks to everyone who jumped on there at SuperCoach365, the place where you would have found that. You'll find us again this week and heading into next year with all of the off-season news, season previews and such. Before we know it, the 2023 season will be upon us. But before that, Tommy, Thursday night, the last Thursday night game of the year, of course, the finals from Friday through till Sunday. So enjoy your Thursday night footy this week, and we will. We're going to head out to this one. The Eels and the Storm, Combank Stadium, the venue. Surprisingly, I thought here with topsport.com.au, the Eels outsiders at home, and they have it all to play for, don't they? A top 4 finish.
Yeah, they do. It's like the finals come early, really. The winner of this comes fourth. We'll talk about this first. Do you think coming fourth is a massive advantage? Obviously, you get a second bite at the cherry, which is huge, but you do have to play away to Penrith round week 1 instead of home to maybe the Raiders. So it's a bit of a different ball game.
Yeah, and I guess depending on what happens with the Cowboys and the Sharks this weekend, I don't know if you want to be going away week 3 of a prelim to either take on the Cowboys in Townsville or even the Sharks at Allianz. So finishing 5th, you get a home final week 1. Then you get the second week of the final. Again, you're going to be away, but it's not a prelim final to win into a grand final. The Storm, they have the experience, so I think they'll be happy to finish 4th or 5th. It won't matter to them. But the Eels, that home crowd advantage in week 1, that could be a real boost for them playing at Combank in a do-or-die final.
It could, but I guess also Eels fans will say that they've beat Penrith twice this year, so they wouldn't be too scared of getting them in week 1. They're going pretty well, to be honest. I think the last 2 weeks they scored over 40 points, 50 against the Broncos. If you have Brown and Moses, as people might have got them in late in the year, they've been getting big scores every week and are really treading their owners to some green arrows, I'd imagine.
Yeah, Brown, of course, he's been doing good things at 5'8", and Moses coming back after that broken thumb, proving a real asset in Nathan Cleary's absence. A popular player Cleary would have been, and that trade Cleary to Moses would have been a popular one as well. Obviously, not to be as it turned out. Speaking of popular players, Cameron Munster, he's probably let us down in the last couple of weeks. Just a 21 last week against the Roosters. It was a high-quality game, so not really a game where SuperCoach points were free-flowing, but again, he's going to be a name we speak about at the back end of the pod in our Player of the Year. Hard to fold him against the Roosters team, which is just soaring at the moment.
No, exactly right. It was a really good game, as we say there, and often that means lower SuperCoach scores, as we said, all season. But he does kind of have quite a low score in him, Munster. I think there's been a few times this year where he's gone, 30 or less. So I guess that's something to be aware of heading into next year.
We will, and of course I think he's been benefited in recent weeks as well by moving to fullback. So I don't know. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that heading into next year. Of course, the Eels there, just to recap, $2.02 outsiders with topsport.com.au. The Storm favourites $1.82, and that line just 1.5, $1.90 each of 2 there. Friday night footy, 6 p.m. kickoff. Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at Accor Stadium up against the lowly Manly Seagulls at the moment. If they get more than 6,000 to this game, I'll be shocked. Because just happening across town, and we'll get to it very soon, arguably one of the bigger games of the year. Before that, though, the Dogs and Manly, they go at it, 6 p.m. kickoff. The Dogs favourites here, $1.48, topsport.com.au. Never would I have thought I've seen this rewind 6 or 8 weeks when Manly were the talk of the town.
Yeah, there's some absolute rubbish games this week. I'll try to be positive about them, but really it's quite hard, and this is one of them. The Dogs are still trying, though, I reckon. I think they did okay against the Sharks the other night, held them to just 16. They couldn't score themselves, but they hung in that game the whole way through with the team who's going to finish second, so not a bad effort. But yeah, Manly, on the other hand, as you're saying there, 6 weeks ago we were saying how good their run-in is. We wanted players like Garrick, Terry Evans perhaps, all these are their backs cooler, maybe even. What's happened? They've just been smashed every week, so it's been very disappointing.
From that point, and I just want to make sure I'm certain before I say this, but from that point, I think they've lost 6 straight games. We said it was the easiest run of any team. We talked up Manly, we talked up the Cowboys, and Manly, they're on a 6-game losing streak, so not the way it panned out for them. Just a bit of team news here. Tavita Pangai Jr. back on the bench here. You say they're still trying for Manly. KO Weeks. Now, we spoke about Josh Schuster last week being a prospect either at fullback or rather at 5/8 next year with Kieran Foran moving on. I think this kid KO Weeks is in with a real shot. He'll play fullback this week. Cooler moves back to the centres. But for mine, keep an eye on KO Weeks because he's been a star in the junior reps, and I'm tipping him for big things.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know much about him, but I actually thought Cooler went quite well there against the Raiders the other day. They were smashed, but Cooler looked probably their only player who had a real go. So interesting. Maybe Des is just trying to look to the future when Turbo is injured, as he seems to be quite a bit. Who would take over?
Yep.
But yeah, probably just looking at the betting here, $1.48 the Dogs, $2.65 Manly. I'd probably be with the Dogs still at -6.5. I just think they don't have much to play for either, but just at home, last game of the year, they might get up for it.
Over under 54.5. So plenty of points they're tipping out there at Accor Stadium, but in towards the eastern suburbs. A rivalry as old as the game itself. The Roosters and the Rabbitohs. $1.80 here. The Roosters favourites. So again, the multi. Look, it's far from a good thing this weekend. The Rabbitohs $2 outsiders. This ticket, it is the hottest in town. It's sold out. They'll be hanging from the rafters, and the Roosters, they'll be doing their best to end their season on a high note after what they've shown the last month or 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. They're already in the finals, both these teams now, after their wins last week. So it's not a must-win game, but I think for both of them, they've got a fair bit of momentum, and they won't want to go into the finals on the back of a loss against their bitter rivals. So it should be awesome. And the new stadium as well, that looks great.
Yeah, it's an absolute beauty. Be sure to check it out if you can. Obviously not at this game, it's sold out, but if you're into the Wallabies or the Matildas, you can jump on on the Saturday or the next Tuesday. Just looking here at the team news, Roosters a couple out. Lindsay Collins, Daniel Tupou, Radley all out injured. Damien Cook, there was talk that he was going to turn up 5 days after he's tested positive to COVID, so they're going to let him have a little bit more of a rest before the finals. And Campbell Graham out as well. So a game that has plenty of stars still, but a couple out that we'll be watching on.
Yeah, who do you think fares worse from this? I don't think Collins is the biggest loss ever. I think they can cover him.
Yep.
Tupou and Radley are definitely two of their strike players, especially Tupou with those high kicks across the field. But then Damien Cook's a massive loss for South, and even though they beat the Cowboys the other night, I thought they were pretty poor.
Yeah, they scraped through, didn't they? They did just enough, just on Radley. Now, I think he came back from either injury or suspension, one of the two, but I don't think they've lost a game since. So that just tells you what he does to that team. And again, probably doesn't get the raps he does, and he gets the talk for his big tackles and hard hitting and such. But it is what he does with the ball, and obviously frees up his outside men. So the Roosters, they will feel the impacts of that one there. Give us a tip, Tommy. Are you tipping with your wallet, your Top Sport account, or are you just rather be on Souths? They've probably just got maybe a little bit less pressure on them this weekend.
I'm going to say Roosters. I just think Cook's a big out. I think Roosters proved the other night how well they're going to beat Melbourne away. So yeah, Roosters. But Latrell, just quickly on him, another 78, I think, last week again. So he's just been awesome. And he's putting his name forward next year to be almost a must-have from the start of the season.
Definitely. And injury aside, I think he would have been there. Was he injured to start the year? Suspended? One of the two.
Suspended after this game last year when he hit Manu.
Yeah, exactly right. And then obviously came back and was injured soon after. So Latrell definitely one to watch, and one that will get a big rap at the back end of the podcast when we start talking about best fullbacks of the year. Moving on, Saturday afternoon footy. This is all but a nothing game as well, isn't it? This will be a game of Oztag. The Warriors and the Titans. The over-under here, as I read it, 56.5. Warriors back at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland. That'll certainly help their cause, and their favourites here with Top Sport, $1.50 head-to-head.
Yeah, not much from a SuperCoach point of view really here. I think the Warriors, you probably wouldn't have owned any players this year. I think there was that Valea as a cheapie at one stage who was getting about 20 a week. But other than that, there hasn't been much. The Titans, though, there's a few more upside players there. Fafita's been good since coming back in the last few weeks. He's playing big minutes. He's scoring some tries. So maybe a few good signs ahead of next year. But you'd still want to see a good off-season from him.
Bo Fermor has been their best SuperCoach asset the whole year, I think. And I think that's, he came into about 330 or 50,000 thereabouts. May have made some coin, lost some coin along the way, but when it's mattered most, he has proven a real threat, a try-scoring threat as well. You might be able to bring up his numbers there. What's he produced the last 4, 5, 6 weeks? He just constantly seems to be banging out scores of 80 upwards, 90 upwards, and running down that left side outside AJ Brimson. It's definitely the spot on the field where, as a Titans back rower, you'd probably rather be down that left edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you say with the Titans, he's been their best player for value because you have David Fafita on that other edge. You're thinking he's going to get all the ball. But, they go to Fermor in the last 3 weeks, 93, 105, 84. He scored 4 tries in the last 3 weeks, 5 tries in the last 4 weeks. So he's just scoring tries at will. He's a real strike player. He doesn't have the biggest base in the world for a 2RF, but amazing attacking output from him.
I think what we liked him this time, well, at the start of the year, I should say, was his duel and the ability to play in the centres. I don't think he's going to get that next year. So, as a SuperCoach proposition, probably a slight knock, but again, for what he's achieved this year, take nothing away from Beau Fermor. And I'll say it, he will play Origin next year. They will put him in. I was big on him this year. I was big on Carrigan. You saw what Carrigan done. He went on to be the player of the series. I wouldn't be shocked if Beau Fermor was player of the series next year. That's how good he can be.
I think he's very similar to Nanai in a way. He's that dynamic sort of running back rower. Maybe Nanai has a little bit more X factor about him, but I do agree. I think he'd do a job at Origin level.
Righto, let's move on. The Dragons and the Broncos. This one 5:30 p.m. from Netstrata Jubilee Stadium in Sydney, the old Cogra Stadium. That one, $2.35 Dragons. Outsiders the Broncos. I'm actually surprised by this. $1.60 favourites. They have shown nothing, and it seems to be a little bit off whatever they're drinking up there at Brisbane. The 4X has gone sour, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 5 weeks ago. They were coming fourth heading into a game against the West Tigers, and they lost against the Tigers. And really, ever since then, it's just been complete disaster. They conceded 113 points in the past 2 weeks, which is just unbelievable. And that's pretty much meant that it's going to be very hard to see them make the finals now.
No coincidences as well that they obviously lost that game to the Tigers. As disappointing as that was, I think the flow-on effects from that, Carrigan suspended for 4 weeks, has spiralled their season out of control. What he adds through the middle can't be understated. He's back this week, so that certainly helps. You say here in the notes, maybe optimistically for Broncos fans, they need to win to force the Raiders to win on Sunday. And you say here, winning by 43 points here would force the Raiders to do a number on their opponents this weekend. I can't see the Broncos winning by 43, but Brisbane could certainly make it interesting.
I think they'll bounce back here. I think, like you said there, Carrigan's a big in. Cobbo's back, although he was just dropped for form, I think. And Reynolds has been named, and you'd think he'd be doing everything to play in a must-win. And Saints aren't much good. So I think Brisbane here. I guess I feel their SuperCoach players have been disappointing lately. I think Stags, most of the year, has gone underwhelming. Payne Haas, probably not the player we expected from a SuperCoach point of view. So, Food for thought for next season.
More than fair to say both of those things. Brisbane, it certainly let us down this year. Some of those players that had potential but just didn't kick on. We'll leave that game there, and obviously all eyes then on the next game Saturday night, rounding us out on Super Saturday. What should have been an absolute top 4 blockbuster, it won't be that, because Penrith, as good as they've been this year, they have the luxury to rest players. They've chosen to rest a dozen of them, and potentially those, most probably those SuperCoach assets that are going to hurt us as well. Taylor May, Isaac Tungor, Viliami Kickout, and Isaiah Yeo, they're all going to be watching on from the sidelines. Not the news we wanted to see when we opened up the NRL.com team list this afternoon.
No, it's definitely not. The 4 of those blokes are very highly owned, so it's going to be hurting people, especially if you have no trades left, which I don't think many do at this stage of the year. But yeah, look, like you said, this game, first versus third or second, should have been one of the games of the year. But Penrith $6.70. I don't think I've seen that for a number of years with topsport.com.au.
Yeah, and they've got out from $4.50 this time yesterday. So I think the bookies, Tristan and co, just hedging their bets yesterday, who would be rested, who wouldn't. They've opened up the team list like you and I did this afternoon, and Penrith on the drift right away. The Cowboys $1.11 the line, minus 19.5. So, that tells you everything you need to know about the Cowboys. Conversely, though, let's look at this game positively from the SuperCoach sense. You're looking at Drinkwater, Valentine Holmes, Murray Taulagi, Thomas Dearden, a chance to come back. He's named in the reserves. So there is some positives for us to look towards this weekend if you are holding some Cowboys assets.
Yeah, they are. In a round with probably not a lot of obvious standout performers, I think some of these Cowboys players could be back at home. against the team. I know Penrith do aim up even when they have their young players in, but it's far inferior to what the Cowboys are rolling out. So you'd have to think some of those high ceiling players could go big.
Just on a look ahead to next year, Sean O'Sullivan, I think he's been superb for Penrith. He probably isn't the flashy number 7, and most certainly isn't, the dynamic highlights sort of player. But he could be exactly the halfback the Dolphins need next year, and probably most likely the year after if they are to land a Munster or one of these other big halves off contract, be it a Ben Hunt or someone else. Because he's the steady hand, he plays his role nicely, and even without Nathan Cleary, they haven't missed a beat, Penrith, have they? Because he's just been exactly what they've needed and complimented Luai last week upon his return.
I almost liken him to his opposite number here a little bit, Chad Townsend. Maybe Townsend's a class above O'Sullivan, but he's that sort of player, that steady, just does a job, lets the other players sort of be the stars, and he just steers the ship around. So yeah, I do think he's a good signing for the Dolphins, definitely.
Rightio, speaking of Chad Townsend, his former club here, and the man that they replaced him with, Nico Hines, up against the Newcastle Knights on Sunday afternoon. We sat here, you and I, last week, Tommy. We looked at Nico Hines against the Bulldogs, and we thought it was just a moral that he would go big. It wasn't to be the case with the Sharks. $1.12 here with topsport.com.au. The Knights at home with not really much to play for. $6.25 outsiders. The line, 18.5. If Nico's going to go big and save our SuperCoach weeks, well, that's probably the only way we're going to get a big score this week.
Yeah, I guess. But at the same time, I think everyone will throw the captaincy on him here. So, maybe the play this week, just trying to make up spots, is captain someone else and just hope he doesn't go big. Because I suppose last week, really surprising. I think he ended up with 66, so he got some big updates. But initially, he only finished on 40-odd, which is very low by the Hines standards.
Yeah, so probably lucky to finish that high in the end. He will be lining up against his opposite halves pairing in Phoenix Crossland and Adam Clune. So not much experience nor flair amongst those two, with the greatest of respects. The Sharks, they'll be happy to see here Dale Finucane come back if he is to play. He's named in the reserves. McInnes, I thought he was back to near his best last week in that scrappy affair. It sort of suited his game down to a T, but they would welcome back their captain in Finucane if he is to be there on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, he's the sort of player they need ahead of the finals. Like, they've been coasting through a lot of this year, I think, the Sharks, especially the last few weeks, just beating lower ranked teams, but not really beating them by much. So I wonder this week if they're looking to really make a statement ahead of the finals, or just happy to get the win and maybe take off some of these big guns at halftime.
Yeah, important though that, and I guess crucially for the Sharks, they get the luxury of seeing what the Cowboys do against Penrith. So then if they do get out to a lead and they're unassailable, suddenly then they can start to rest players like Nico Hines, give them a freshen up, because they're going to know that they've got a home final the next week back at Shark Park, and sitting pretty they will be, because again they can just reduce that risk of liability heading into the finals.
Yeah, I think that's a massive factor, especially with probably going to put the captain on Hines, or a lot of people will anyway. If you see him going off after 50 minutes, you'll be kicking yourself.
All right, consider that when you're making your captaincy choices this weekend, and maybe, again, take into account what the Cowboys do against the Panthers on Saturday night. First game, or rather the last game of the week, last game of the season. This one, the West Tigers up against Tommy's Raiders, and a big game for the Raiders. I think it's as simple as they win and they're in for the top 8. Again, they had the luxury of seeing how Brisbane fare earlier in the week. And the Raiders here expected to get the job done. $1.27. The Tigers outsiders at Leichhardt, $3.80. The line, 12.5 with topsport.com.au.
Yeah, we should win, but I really think they'll still feel the pressure on Sunday if Brisbane do beat the Dragons. We usually beat the Tigers, but yeah, I'm pretty nervous still. Big from the other day from the Raiders, one of their biggest scores I think they've put on in a couple of years, 48 against Manly. Tarpanay just continues to be a beast, really. I'm sure we'll get to him in the awards section, but yeah, he's been the star of the show for Canberra this year by a long way.
Yeah, by a long way. And we didn't really, I won't say we didn't expect it entirely, probably to the degree and the consistency which he's turned out, we have been a little bit surprised by. But in terms of showing his potential and what he can achieve, we saw glimpses of it in seasons gone by, but again, he's really taken his game to a new level this year. This game has the feeling to me, I think it was 2016, I think it was Raiders Tigers last week of the regular season. Geez, we're going back a long way here. But the Raiders went to Leichhardt, and I think they put a number on them, didn't they? Was it 60-something?
Yeah, in the 50s, it was the day... Everyone remembers this try that Leilua threw this mad ball to the Rapana.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it anyway. So, look, if we can put on that sort of show, it'll be a great, relaxing watch. But, I don't know, the Tigers, they're a funny team. Some weeks they do aim up and cause a bit of mayhem, but hopefully not this week anyway.
Yeah, and you said it yourself. The Tigers were the spoilers for the Broncos season. They potentially could be again here for the Raiders come Sunday afternoon. Nick Kotrick back for the Raiders. And again, you say here, James Tarmow, lol. He gets his chance at a home farewell. I don't think it'll be a memorable occasion. Maybe a memorable occasion, but for all the wrong reasons for the Tigers.
Yeah, well, the spoon's already wrapped up for them, so, I mean, they have nothing really to play for, nothing to lose. Does it make them dangerous, or will they just give up? Who would know?
Yeah, watch on with interest, that one. Sunday afternoon footy. All right, we're going to cut to a quick break. Courtesy of Top Sport, the other side, we're going to dive into our Player of the Year awards. I know you've all been waiting for that.
Having a bet on sport this week? Top this.
Whether you're into cricket and curling or golf and greyhounds, Top Sport will let you on for plenty. And with literally hundreds of markets from your own backyard to the international stage, Top Sport has you well covered. So if you want to get the top odds every time, bet with Top Sport.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Yes, welcome back. SuperCoach365 podcast, brought to you by topsport.com.au, of course, a proud partner of the podcast this year, last year, and hopefully next year if we are going round again. Again, we might make a decision on that in the off-season, so stay tuned for that. Speaking of our partners this year, of course, if you're still putting your tips in with top tippers, you are more resilient and more headstrong than Tommy and I are, because we gave up on that a long time ago. But take nothing away from those who are. Be in touch with us at the end of this week if you do come first. I couldn't tell you who's coming first, but anyway, if you are, DM us on Instagram. We'll sort you out with your $500 prize, and whoever comes second end of the year, we'll sort you out with your NRL jersey of your choice as well, just in time for the finals. So plenty to look forward to on that front as well. Speaking of handing out prize money, we'll do our classic winners as well in our overall group. Again, I'm going to say it, the onus is on you to contact us, because we've sort of done this the wrong way. We haven't got anyone's details, so the reliance is on you. If you want your 500, you know where to find us, at SuperCoach365. Tommy, before we get into the Player of the Year awards, as we always do, this is the part where we check in with the futures markets, topsport.com.au. The premiership winner, the Panthers, on the back of that showing last week and the week prior, when they've managed to win without Cleary still. $2.15 they are to take out the championship again. I thought the Storm were value last week, but given what I've seen from them against the Roosters, and again what Panthers have shown us in the last fortnight, that $2.15, it looks a good bet still.
Yeah, I'd have to still be with the Panthers. The Roosters into fourth favourite at $8.50. They've just come from nowhere. They were ninth a few weeks ago, and now they're one of the main chances. So really good from them. Still think the Parramatta Eels on their day could spring an upset, but they're probably going to have to win 4 games straight in the finals. So that's pretty hard.
Yeah, and if they don't, then again, I mean, they'll be out week 3 most likely anyway, the Eels. Roosters know the value there. The Sharks, I think I like them if they are to finish second. I think that's important. I think they can win the comp if they finish second, but Penrith at $2.15 looks a good bet. Again, there's probably not too much else to look at here, but to make the grand final, $3 a Shark, so value there. I think that's probably a value bet if they do finish second as well. And the Roosters, surprisingly here, $3.60. Regardless of what happens this week, they're going to have to come from outside the top 4, but they are the 4th favourites overall, so shows you that momentum is a big thing this time of year.
It definitely does, and the team with no momentum is really the Cowboys, I'd have to say, and they're likely to finish 3rd now. If they had to finish 2nd, they definitely wouldn't have been the $5.50 to make the grand final that they are, because they would have got that nice home game in week 1, and then potentially in week 3. But it's going to be a different story now, with probably getting the home game in week 2.
Massive, isn't it? Massive. And that's to think as well. Don't forget that they were the beneficiaries of that wrought of a win against the Tigers a few weeks ago. So, I mean, the top 2 versus top 3 battle, that could have been sorted already. So, they're probably lucky to even still be in that conversation. All right, anyway, all of those markets, topsport.com.au, check it out. The EPL, the NBA is back soon. Everything you could think of, you can bet on it. Do so responsibly, topsport.com.au. Tommy, let's get into this. Our Player of the Year awards. As I say, big thanks to everyone who got involved. More than 10,000 people jumped on, or at least 10,000 votes across the awards. So big thanks to that. And I even think I got a DM from the Rugby League guru who said he's doing a podcast on exactly this. He's taken our idea. He's going to give us some credit. But listen to this one. Wednesday morning, he's going to go through all of this, talk our awards, the awards winners as well. So Rugby League guru, check it out. He obviously likes our idea here. Now, this wasn't one of the awards, but I want to kick us off on the negatives and focus on the positives towards the end. But the biggest flops of the year, let's start with who let us down most. I'm just going to throw up some names here in no particular order, but probably have to start at the top with Tom Trbojevic, don't we?
Yeah, it depends, I guess, your definition of a flop. I mean, a lot of the players that have let us down were just injured. And that, in SuperCoach terms, it doesn't matter why they're out, they're still out. So, Turbo was massive. Ryan Pappenhausen missed a lot of the year. Even if people are in Latrell, he was out for about 10 weeks. So a lot of these probably top 5 draft picks were out for long periods.
Yeah, throw in that as well. Nathan Cleary's suspension to end the year. As you say there. So Trbojevic, Cleary, Pappenhausen. James Tedesco, probably the only one that has lasted the whole season from that top 4 or top 5 draft list. Then you have Latrell, who was out, as you say. And pick 6 in many leagues would have been David Fifita, who has failed to live up to his 2021 hype. I think he scored 17 tries last year, nowhere near that this year. So is that a flop? Maybe. But looking at some of these mid-range options as well, I mean, we even spoke up Wade Graham to start the year. I think he's averaged about 30.
Yeah, I guess we just got on the wrong horse there. Blake Taff was another one who I was quite keen on. I got him in at one stage, and he's did nothing really. He's not even making the team now. Ben Trbojevic has been a constant burden in a lot of people's teams. I want to throw one more name out there, Sifa Talakai. Now, it might be harsh to call him a flop, though, because pre-season we didn't think he would do anything. Then he had 2 massive scores, which got everyone really excited, but ever since then, I don't think he's got above 40 or 50, and it's been a tough hold, unfortunately.
Yeah, he certainly did us all dirty. Another one I want to throw up, James Schiller, potentially as well. We were all shocked. I remember that team list Tuesday, round 1. We saw Jay Schiller, 175k, whatever he was. Our eyes lit up, and the next week he was gone. So another one that really did us dirty this year. But I want to focus on the positives now. Let's move into it. 10 awards to get through tonight, the same 10 that we dished out this time last year. I'm going to start with the cheapie of the year. Now, we threw this up on the Instagram. As I say, there were 4 leading contenders in this. And obviously, Taylor May was one from the Penrith Panthers. Max King of the Bulldogs. Who else do we have? Joseph Suwali of the Sydney Roosters, of course. And Will Pinasini from the Parramatta Eels. And pretty convincing win, this one in the end.
Yeah, I think it was somewhat predictable. Taylor May, 57% of voters went with him. And, he burst into the scene, really, once he locked down that left wing spot. Him and Tago were just awesome on that left-hand side, benefiting from Luai's ball play. 106 in his first game, and then he just kept going on from there. 64 average for the year. So, yeah, it's a great season for him. He started so cheap.
I think he, as you say there, debuted with 106. Then I think it was scores of like 90 and 90 again. At one point, his break-even was minus 125, and at his peak, he made 290k. So if you were selling high, well done to you. If you didn't, no real harm done, because he's averaged 64 points per game over the course of the season, proved himself a real keeper in the end, from cheapie to keeper. Notable shout though here as well, Suwali played a role around Origin, scored some points. Magic round, he of course scored that great try leaping over the Eels winger. But Max King, probably the unsung hero, 180k I think he was to start the year, and still round 24 he's banging out scores of 60 plus, so very valuable at front row forward.
Absolutely. He's not someone I've had all season, but I just keep seeing him churn out scores. Like you said there, he's rock bottom price at the start of the year, and he's just done a job the whole way through. So he won't be as cheap next year, but people who got in this year, they will benefit from it.
Notable omission may be Josh King. At certain points, he was doing jobs for many super coaches. Anyway, minutes reduced, scores went down. But if you were selling high on Josh King, another one that would have rated a mention there. Surprise of the year, our next award. Now, the contenders here, Joey Tarpanay, Sean Lane, Dylan Brown or Ruben Cotter. This one much closer than maybe I anticipated. Sean Lane, he would have never have come up in a Supercoach conversation in his life. But here he is, surprise packet of the year potentially, or is he not?
He's come third in the running. Tarpanay has won out, 38%, just ahead of Cotter at 33%. Lane 23%, and then Dylan Brown at 7%. But I think all four names were great value this year. Tarpanay, though, I definitely think he deserves the win. Pre-season, we struggled to find anyone really to talk about for the Raiders, as we've said a few times, but he really put his name forward as arguably the best forward in the comp. And on SuperCoach, averaging probably in the last probably half the season at least over 70. So just massive from him. And Ruben Cotter, another one. I think next year he'll be one of the first people picked for a lot of teams.
Joey Tarpanay, career best Supercoach year. I said earlier in the podcast, he's shown potential in different stages. 2018, 2020 spring to mind, but 67 points per game average this year and 11 scores higher than 70. So your front rowers are banging out those numbers. I mean, it's just immaculate. Sets your team rather on the right note from the get-go. Excuse me. Joking on this one because I couldn't believe this when I saw it yesterday. Now, it hasn't finished the way that it was at that stage, but fullback of the year, 4 leading contenders here. Now, just to preface this as well, why haven't we put Nikko Hines at fullback here? Well, he hasn't played a lot of fullback this year. He has played there, but again, with a lot of these dual position players, I've gone at those who have primarily played in that position. So when we get to halfback, we may mention Nico Hines. Fullback, Tedesco, Gutherson, Edwards or Mitchell. Mitchell's played only, half the season, but he went very close here.
He did 39%, but Tedesco takes it out with 44%. I guess I don't think we've spoken about Tedesco that much this year compared to previous seasons, yet he's still judged by the fans, the fullback of the year. I think a big factor to take into consideration here is obviously injuries to Paps and Turbo, who would have been, the first 2 fullbacks chosen in most teams. But Teddy's still done a great job, 91 points per game since Origin, and he's a big part of why the Roosters have won 7 straight.
Now, I said to you, I think it was towards the start of the season, you can't play Supercoach without James Tedesco in your team. I think probably 2 weeks later he was gone, and I haven't had him since. But that's my own doing. Maybe that's why I'm ranked fucking 9,000. Tedesco, though, again, by no means his best Supercoach year, but he's still a fan favourite. He found form in that tricky... It was an awkward period, wasn't it? From about round 7 to 12. We juggled. Do we trade him in before Origin? Do we not? As you say there, on the other side of Rep 40, he's averaged 91. And maybe if we had this poll middle of the season, Tedesco wouldn't have won it. But because it is at the back end of the year, when it's fresh in everyone's mind, his recent form, he has come over Latrell Mitchell, who I will say, if he plays the full season Latrell, maybe it is a different result.
Oh yeah, I think Latrell wins if he plays more games, but I think that's a big reason why Teddy has won this poll, because he's been ever present. I don't think he's missed many games at all. All the other fullback options have missed large chunks of the season, so Teddy's done a great job for Supercoaches.
You've got to take into account that longevity as well, don't you? When you're picking your draft teams and such for next year. So maybe Turbo won't be pick 1. Teddy maybe slipped to 4 or 5 in leagues this year. He may be pick 2, 3. So keep an eye on that next year. Before that, though, centre wing of the year, the next position here, the nominees. Taylor May, of course, already has that cheapy mantle to his name, but centre of the wing potentially. Joey Manu, Ruben Garrick or Alex Johnston. Bit of a landslide result this one. Joey Manu 68%, which probably a little bit harsh to Alex Johnston, who again continues to surprise us.
He does, but I think myself and players love the way Manu just kind of makes his own score. He gets so involved. He touches the ball so often, and some of those games where he's playing fullback at 5'8" this year, he's putting up huge scores. I think he went 150 odd at one stage of the year in one of the games. I can't remember, but he has been awesome. And you've asked me here in the notes, must have for 2023, and I think he probably is. I think he's going to get more involved as he continues to play for the Roosters. Teddy will get a little bit older. I think Manu will continue to get a lot of ball and put up some massive scores.
You mentioned Munster's low floor, your 20s, your 30s. Manu does have that in him. Now, it's the other side, isn't it? When he's playing fullback or he's playing 5'8", I think he scored 180 against the Dragons, was it? It was a massive score, whatever it was. You do have to take the good with the bad, don't you? With Joey Manu, his dual position, I think he keeps that next year. So, I mean, that is a big, big plus for Manu, whereas some of these other dual position players will lose that next year. Joey Manu, I think he's going to be in a lot of teams. Maybe not from round 1, but come round 4 or 5 next year, he will be a mainstay.
Yeah, for sure. Probably some other notable mentions. Val Holmes in the last few weeks has been pretty good. Maybe not that consistent over the course of the season. Any others that spring to mind here?
Left field, but Adam Dewey. If he plays the full year, dual position eligible, goal kicking, the Tigers would have been a better team if he was there the whole year. Centre wing, I don't think he keeps that next year. Maybe he did play a few games at centre upon his return from that ACL. If he's in the centres next year, round 1 fit, he'll get in at a cut price, and I think he's nearly, I don't know if he's a must-have, but he's certainly going to be in the conversation for centre wing options to start 2023.
Yeah, and I think almost playing for a team devoid of much talent like the Tigers makes him a more attractive option because everything will go through him. So yeah, I do agree. Definitely one to set your sights on for next year.
Speaking of teams devoid of talent, the Bulldogs, they come up here and they rate a mention courtesy of Matt Burton, 5/8 of the year nominee, alongside some of the big guns that we consistently seem to talk about here. Cameron Munster, Cody Walker, and again, one of the surprise packets, the young gun. He started to deliver on some of that height, which he's shown in recent times. Dylan Brown, they're your 4 nominees for your 5/8 of the year.
Yeah, 4 good nominees, but Munster 67% landslide victory here, and we spoke him up a lot pre-season. His coach even spoke him up, Craig Bellamy, said he's a changed man, all the narrative, and it really came to fruition. He had a great season, a couple of low scores here and there, but also some massive scores, especially against, I think it was the Warriors, was it the Titans? Whenever he played fullback a few weeks ago, he went absolutely huge, and I didn't own him, which really hurt. Yeah. So yeah, he was great. And Dylan Brown coming in second at 24%. I think he's had a great year, and he was nominated for our surprise packet of the year, and he's been awesome, really. Surprise
packet indeed, because I mean, we never really considered him. You and I, for the past 2 years in the preseason, we've had the 5/8 slot down to 2, Munster or Walker. Certainly going to open up next year with the emergence of Dylan Brown and a couple of these other names as well. Munster, he's hovered around that 65, 75 point per game average his whole career to date. Upwards of 80 points as it stands heading into round 25. So if you can finish on a high in that game against the Eels, coincidentally up against Brown, who comes second here, it's going to be a big way to finish off the year for Munster, who could get dual position status next year. So would you be tempted by Munster at the fullback slot next year, even though there's a host of guns there that can play number 1?
Yeah, massive. I think it's still a big benefit. I don't know. It definitely just adds another reason to get him. I just want to talk about one more player in this slot, Cody Walker. Only 3% of people who voted here went with Walker as the 5/8 of the year. And, at the start of the year, it was honestly a 50-50 split between him and Munster. You probably wanted both. They were the two. But Munster gets 67%, Walker gets 3%. Walker could almost be one of the flops that we spoke about at the start of this segment.
Definitely. And just to wrap this up, just on Munster, I don't know if it helps his classic propositions, but if you have a 5/8 fullback in draft, that's a massive, massive advantage. And maybe he does, lift from that pick 9 or 8 or potentially as low as 10 or 12 in some leagues as well, Munster. So keep an eye on that next year. Speaking of good dual position players, what about this one? Nikko Hines, talking of halfback of the year contenders, he's right amongst the thick of things. Nathan Cleary, Mitchell Moses for his back end of year form, and Jerome Hughes. They're your 4 that we're going to talk about here. But really, all things considered, there's only one winner.
Yeah, no surprises here. Nico Hines, 71%. Obviously, Cleary has been out a few times this year, injured and suspended, 22%. But still, Hines, even with Cleary fully fit, I think Hines was scoring better, to be honest. Just so important to that Sharks team, touches the ball so often. And I think we were both really sceptical of him at the start of the season, going from Melbourne to the Sharks in a new position.
Yeah.
But he's made us look a fool for sure.
Definitely. Not the first time, won't be the last that you and I look like fools. Just on that, though, is Cleary a flop? Because he would have went, pick 1 or pick 2 in draft leagues. He obviously wasn't there when it mattered most in draft finals. He's cost us potentially 2 or 3 trades in Classic around Origin, getting him out, back in, then out again. 21% Nathan Cleary. I think that's well below where he would have rated otherwise. So 21%, he's borderline flop for mine.
Yeah, look, you make a case, especially given how many trades you've had to burn getting him in and out of your team at various times. And I am surprised he's, 21, 22%, and Moses is only 4%. I think Moses has probably almost offered more to Supercoaches this year than Cleary, really.
Rightio, let's move this on. 2RF of the year, second row forward, of course. Isaiah Papali'i Kaloa, is that his name? Keon Kaloa-Matangi. Let's get that right. Keon Kaloa-Matangi, Angus Crichton, or that man Sean Lane. Again, pretty convincing winner here.
Yeah, it had to be IPAP. I guess he could have been 2RF or FRF, but he's played more in the 2RF slot, so he wins that. And I think last year it's similar to Hines. We didn't know if we could back up the big scoring this year, but he did that and probably went even better.
Yeah, I mean, we had our doubts, didn't we, of whether we would go through the middle at different stages, and obviously the Eels' front row rotation off the bench, it would have lended itself to that. And I think even at stages he may have played in the front row this year for the Eels, or certainly through the middle at lock. But as a second row option on an edge, he's just continued to build upon that combination, be it with Moses or Arthur at different stages this year. He's scoring tries off kicks, he's running over people, he's sprinting from 30, 40 metres out. He's just a complete player.
He is, and I'd never expected it really when he left the Warriors. He didn't really do much there, but he's turned into, in NRL terms, he's one of the best buys ever. They got him so cheap, and I think they're losing him to the Tigers next year, which... How does that impact his play? Will he be as good on Supercoach? It remains to be seen.
Has a bit of the Adam Blairs about it, doesn't it, that move? They buy a second row forward at their career peak. I know Papali'i probably younger than Blair was when he left the Melbourne, I think it was at the time. But he was one of the formed second rowers in the game. He went to the Tigers and just, never delivered. So keep an eye on that, Isaiah Papali'i next year at West. Front row forward of the year. Now, Papali'i obviously doesn't get the start here, but the 4 nominees, Joey Tapine, Big Joe Offahengawe, he's potentially a surprise packet as well, Tino Fa'asumaliawi, and David Clemmer.
Well, this is our biggest victory of the night, 84%, Joe Tapine, and
wow,
how do you make a case for anyone else, really? He won the surprise award, and you couldn't really see this coming. I mean, you said he had potential over the years, and he definitely has, but I never saw this level of work rate and base sort of stats in Supercoach from him until now. He's just in the, the consistency of it too. Every week in, week out, 70 plus. He's the heart and soul of the Raiders team, and he's the heart and soul of most people's Supercoaches team as well.
There was times where we sat here and we laughed and we poked fun at his missus for tweeting that he should have had more game time. Is she next in line to be an NRL coach? Because she can see potential.
She should be there, a scout or something, because she's 100%. But he wasn't really showing this form. In Ricky's defence, he was a bit hit and miss. But, after this season, he's firmly entrenched as one of the best players in the game, really.
Yeah, the Raiders losing a couple of assistants, I think, to the Titans and Newcastle or the Dolphins. So Mrs. Tarpanay may be getting a call up in the coach's box. No, Joey Tarpanay, well done. Without doubt, the best front row forward option to end the year, and certainly throughout large parts of 2022. Let's move up to the hooker slot now, the last of the main positions here that we'll talk. 4 nominees here: Damien Cook, Api Coruscant, Harry Grant, and our boy Robbo. He's doing good things. Reece Robson, of course. I'm a little bit surprised by this, Tommy. This result didn't go the way I thought it would.
No, me neither. I probably voted differently here. In one of our most competitive categories, though, Harry Grant wins out with 43% of the votes ahead of Cook at 26%. Even Coruscant and Robson not disgraced with 19% and 12% respectively. But I might have gone Damien Cook personally.
Yeah, I'm with you, I think. And maybe I'm biased because I held Cook the whole year and he was so good. But the numbers back it up, don't they? Because Cook has scored more points overall. That said, you can't doubt Harry Grant's ceiling. I think on average, Harry pips him. And he's only going to be better next year, you'd think, because that whole conundrum of Brandon getting minutes or pushing Grant or whatever it was, the half situation as well, I think, hurt Harry Grant at different stages this year. He played halfback 1 week. So once he locks down that number 9 role consistently, I think he's going to be the best hooker to have from day one next year.
Yeah, and I think the Storm have gone probably worse than people expected this year. You know, we had them as a top 4 lock, and they're only maybe going to make it. So many injuries that hasn't helped Grant as well. But yeah, no Brandon Smith next year is a massive up, and Cook's getting on a little bit in age. So yeah, Grant for the next few years, I think he'll be first picked at hooker for everybody.
Now, we haven't spoken about this guy, Brandon Smith. Is he a flop? We should have probably spoken about him from the start, because I think I went back last year and I looked at our hooker of the year, 2RF of the year, dual position player of the year. Brandon was, right in the thick of all of that. Again, I think the style of the game last year suited Brandon. But if he can get back to the Roosters and find some of that form, get a little bit fitter, he could be an option for us next year, even as a backup hooker.
I went to go press on Brandon Smith's profile on NRL SuperCoach Stats, which is a great website. You should use it if you don't already. And I accidentally clicked on Billy Smith. Now, there's a flop. But Brandon Smith,
wow.
He is definitely a flop by the numbers. 68 average last year, down to 46. So averaging 22 less. It's a big drop-off. And he scored so many tries last year, so I think that really boosted his numbers.
Yeah, okay. We said we wanted to finish on a high. We've sort of just bagged out. That was a drive-by there, 2 for 1. Billy and Brandon, the Smiths of the Roosters as of 2023, copying and pasting from Tommy. As we wind this up, now the dual position player of the year, your contenders here, your final 4 as it was, Nikko Hines, Isaiah Papali'i, Joey Manu, and the first time we've mentioned him here, but Scott Drinkwater. He did jobs at fullback and 5/8 for us. The other 3, probably a class above. And that told in the voting here, but all of these winners or all of these nominees could have been winners, and it would have been very hard to argue.
Yeah, worthy nominees for sure, but Hines wins out again. His second award of the night, 49%. And I think that's hard to argue with statistically. And also, I genuinely, personally used him as a DPP. I used him fullback some weeks. I used him as halfback some weeks. Yeah. He was great to just move up and down where I wanted to put my captaincy. So for that purpose, I think he definitely deserves to win.
Definitely. And I think, as you say there, we sort of took that into consideration when we put this together because, I mean, some of these dual position players, like we've already spoken about, I think Joey Tarpanay is one, Papali'i, Isaiah is another one. Sort of these SuperCoach relevant players that we wanted to mention here that were actually used in the couple of positions. So, and obviously Manu at different stages. For me personally, did a job at fullback around Turbo's injury and such. So anyway, that's the way we've landed there. Nikko Hines, he takes out the dual position player of the year. And as if we haven't said his name enough, the SuperCoach 365 player of the year. Drum roll, please. Probably no shocks, but that man again, Nikko Hines.
Yeah, Nikko Hines, third award of the night. He's going to have his hands full getting home after this function. But no, he's done very well. We obviously, I wouldn't say we bagged him out pre-season at all. We were just kind of wary of him. Going from, the best team in the comp over the last 20 years to the Sharks, playing halfback instead of fullback. There was so many factors to consider, but his average and his weekly scoring, his ceiling, it all speaks for itself. He's barely missed a game either. So absolutely a worthy winner of the Player of the Year.
I want to take you back to the 17th of November 2021. In our 2022 Recruit Series, Nico Hines, we had him at the projected draft pick of 40th to 50th, so round 5 pick. This is what we said. Nico Hines announced himself as an out-and-out star this season. Of course, speaking of 2021, played the fullback role in the absence of Pappenhausen, but he arrives at Cronulla with a huge question to answer. Can he lead the Sharks' playmaking week in, week out? Will he goal kick because it made up almost 20% of his output last year? Didn't he leave us with egg on our faces after that?
Hindsight is 2020, mate, isn't it? Yeah. No, look, he's answered all the questions. And I don't see it changing for the next few years. His goal kicking's got better as well, which, like you said, there is a big part of his output. So yeah, Hines, next year he's probably my draft pick number 1 next year, to be honest.
Nico Hines, draft pick number 1. Look, I said I'd die on the Ryan Bappenhausen hill. I may still yet, but no, Nico Hines, he's making a very good case for that. And even still, looking back on this year and back in rugby league circles, could he win a Dally M? I mean, why not? Why not Nico Hines? Ben Hunt maybe pips him, but I mean, you look at those other big names that all missed a whole chunk of footy. Nico Hines was always there as well. So Hunt or Hines potentially for Dally M in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, it's two names we probably would have been. I don't think we bet on Dally M's anymore, but geez, they would have been hundreds, both of them, especially Ben Hunt. But yeah, I don't know who wins that. I mean, Nico maybe has had the more eye-catching season, but Ben Hunt's been great for the Dragons.
All right, Tommy, that wraps us up. We will recap all of these awards as such on our Instagram at SuperCoach365. We will get into our captain's call one last time on Wednesday as you listen to this. We'll put up our final teams for the final week as well. Before we wrap it up, though, I just want to say big thanks to everyone who's got involved in the listener questions. They've DM'd us at different stages of the year because without you, we just simply don't do this. So big thank you to you, and a big thank you to everyone who's got involved and kept us going at different stages at the year when things maybe... I mean, you see those red arrows on a Monday. It is hard to get up for a podcast on a Tuesday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great getting, I guess, feedback from our fans. A lot of regular listeners who always ask questions. So big thank you to those guys especially. And obviously thank you to our sponsors, Top Sport, and even Top Tippers. And those who are putting the tips in still and up the top of the Classic comp, definitely reach out to us and claim your prize.
And good on those who shaved their balls with Manscaped at the start of the year as well. Probably due for a trim up as well. Heading into the finals. No better time to get around that. Tommy, big thanks to you as well. Big thanks to listeners, as we say there. Now, 2 massive results. One last time, please. Put everything. You cross your fingers, toes for the Eels and... Well, not the Eels. The Storm. Not the Eels. The Storm and the Roosters. Look forward to that. Thursday night footy, that's where we kick it off. We might be a little bit richer come Friday night. Beers on us. SuperCoach365 podcast. We'll talk to you soon.